This is, I guess, where I see the best. All right, we're live, everybody. Good morning, wherever you are. Good morning to a morning of sustainability, a wake-up call with some distinguished speakers from, well, around the world, from different perspectives of corporate backgrounds, from different perspectives of life. And from the startup world, from the big government organizations, but also from people who are working from their hearts to help to make the planet a more sustainable place and something we all thrive for. So this morning we took as an introduction to our new leadership class of Futur.io, and I'm really pleased that we got more than 1,000 registered participants. So if you are joining now on the live streams, find your favorite platform. We stream on Zoom, we stream on Vimeo, we stream on the Facebook page of Futur.io, we stream on the LinkedIn page of Futur.io, and even I think on the Twitter account and on YouTube. So I think you should find your most comfortable zone. Which is also important because in the later sessions when we have Q&As for the panelist or for the speaker, we have the opportunity that we read your chats in preferably on Vimeo and or LinkedIn, and then your questions from these chats can be addressed to the panelists. So I hope that is a convenient way. I also want to invite you to participate in a raffle. We are giving away 2 tickets which are free to attend the new Leaders in Sustainable Innovation and Execution class. And we hope that this will find people who are open for innovation, but also want to be part of the next generation of doers, and not only dreamers, but also people who take action in their respective environment, whether you are at a corporate or a startup or wherever you are. This is an exciting morning. We're launching our leadership program tomorrow officially. There have been a soft launch over the summer. I guess officially summer is over now, and we know some of the let's say, we have seen in Germany it was the most rainiest summer since a long time, which was good for agriculture. We touch upon this later, but maybe for your personal mind, some of you might seek some sun, which also leads us into the whole topic of warming, and we have to probably understand which kind of casual wishes of having more sun in our lives mean in the long run. I want to also more or less welcome to the Anthropocene. One of the things we know is that climate change and the environment has mostly now caused by humankind. The IPCC report is a code red where it's clear that scientists now say, which we all know since a long time, the influence of humans and our actions is no longer, to ignore that the planet is suffering and we need to all do something together. So again, the agenda today, I'd like to introduce you to Bernhard Kovac in a minute from the World Food Programme. We have a short introduction keynote from him, and then we have a Q&A. Then we have a panel with Tobias Martetschläger, Christoph Beutler, and Abir Haddad. And in the end, we also have a joint Q&A session again. And the very last minutes are for the raffle of the 2 tickets and some closing remarks. So I hope this is interesting for you. I hope that you are joined, you have a coffee in your hands or any other favorite drinks, so that we can go ahead and invite you to participate and hear from our experts. I'm extremely delighted that we have these different perspectives again with us this morning, and we will dive right in. Just one last sentence about our program. At Futur.io, the last 3 years, we have developed leadership programs which we held at amazing locations, which is now sort of the aftermath of COVID, where we are very slowly coming back to convene in real time, and that's why we are extremely delighted that really, so many of you have registered, and that we can bring some of the new format into our lives, so that we can hear from the speakers, but also find hopefully more ways to be in a virtual room and more engaging even with the audience in close time as well. We had a first start with our Moonshot Thinking program, which also starts again next week. But our main core mission is that we want to educate about exponential technologies and desirable futures. And for us, desirable futures, which is a little bit cryptic for some, always thought of as thinking about, well, how can I understand the technology and innovation, the power of innovation, and use it for sustainability and use it for the long run, so that we have a positive future and something which is, bringing us to a better place, and not have all the innovation and talent, of young people and startups wasted on with AI and amazing technology, and then have a 5-minute faster pizza delivery. I think there's a lot of concepts which get funded like this, but I think that's the model of 2015. So welcome to 2021 and a new reality. We have heard about the IPCC report just 2 weeks ago when it was released. We actually had a co-author invited, Johanna from Australia. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it this morning. So we find another time to speak with a scientist and expert who was actually part of the recording. Now, we have an expert with us, which is, from the World Food Program, which is at this point the current Nobel Prize laureate for peace. Bernhard leads the Innovation Accelerator in Munich, and we've been friends since a long time. And he has been just pushing ahead with his team, and also basically on a weekly basis, getting awards for, Fast Company said it's the most innovative place to work. And yesterday or 2 days ago, you were the Steirer of the week. So your home country in Austria, or home county, also recognize you. And I'm really delightful that you join us, Bernhard. Good morning to Munich. I know you've built a global headquarter of innovation for the World Food Program to be located in Munich. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your work, and then kick us off this morning with, with your point of view of where the World Food Program is today. We know there's a lot of pressing points from Mozambique to other places, which is very tied together with climate change. But you are the experts. Please take the stage. Good morning, Bernhard.
Good morning, Harald, and it's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And it's, as you say, it's actually really amazing to see so many people who are excited about changing the world and making the world a better place through innovations and technology. And I think this is something that is also something that inspires me, that inspires us to, use technology to actually be a greater force for good. Now, before I dive into some more content about our work in particular, I think when you look at the IPCC report and climate change in particular, this is also something that is driving or that influences global hunger in a grander scheme of things. And I want to start with that because it's just making it tangible. A lot of times people talk about well, why should I care about global warming? And sorry, oftentimes you will hear about, for instance, climate shocks, things like extreme weather events, whether it's wildfires, whether it's droughts, whether it's floods. Now, interestingly enough, there's currently wildfires in the US, there have been floods in Germany and other places. There's a hurricane right now in the US, all of these things happen. All of this is in the media. These things cause displacement, so people have to pack up and leave their homes. It also destroys the crops. So if you imagine a drought, so if it's extreme, that will make the media, and this is gonna be visible to people. Okay, that's something that happens. What's actually more severe and what's usually not making the headlines is things like, if there's a rising salinity in the soil, like there's higher salt content in the soil, or there's more salt in groundwater, so like you can't drink it anymore, or you can't grow the crops anymore, or there's heat stress on crops, and therefore you have, the crops don't grow as much anymore, or like the rainy season starts 2 weeks later. Like, you won't hear in the news if the rainy season in Kenya is starting 2 weeks later, but the result of that might be that the food production in a particular country might only be down to 50% instead of what it used to be before. So the effects of these things are massive. And then as the last point for us to consider is, there's the risk multiplier effect, in particular for some of the most vulnerable countries. When you're thinking about developing countries, people who are already poor, people who are suffering from inequality, they will be hit harder, even more, by everything that's going to be there for climate factors and so on. That just intensifies the inequality that we are already seeing. And I just want to leave that thought, and like as a starting point, like why do we even talk about this? Well, all of this is actually going together. Climate change, global warming, conflict, inequalities, like there's lots of things that influence each other. Now, to tell you a little bit more, and like as a starting point of, there's lots of bad things happening, but there's also good potential of technology and innovation, how that can help. Let me start with why are we as World Food Program even caring, and like why are we working on this? And as Harald was saying, we as the World Food Program, we are the world's largest humanitarian agency, saving lives in emergencies and changing lives so the people have something sustainable to eat. We reach about 115 million people in 88 countries. And because of that work, we were just awarded the Nobel Peace Prize of last year. But why are we talking about innovation and technology? It's this picture here. In the long run, in the last 30 years, the number of hungry people has actually been declining. But what happens in the last 6 years is actually because of climate change, conflict, COVID-19 most recently, the number of hungry people has increased again. So if we are serious about ending hunger, and that we think that there should be equality for all, we don't want to have poverty on the planet, we need more innovation, we need more startups, we need the best and brightest minds to come together and say, like, okay, what can we possibly do? And this is the starting point of my current day job, which is essentially in the World Food Program, running our global accelerator. So we are identifying, supporting, and then scaling the best innovations and startups that can help us end hunger. Now, our path, and I'm not going to dwell on this for too long, is essentially we have a small incubation function where we look at blockchain technologies, artificial intelligence, so on. And then the rest is what you would see in any private sector startup accelerator as well. Is like from identifying innovations, we then typically run a 1-week training program that we call Innovation Bootcamp. In our sprint program, we provide up to $100,000 of grant funding, so equity-free cash, hands-on support through our team and connections to our field offices. And then the best teams go up to scale-up enablement. And this is really the path. Why are we doing this? Everything that we're doing is how can we help people at scale, right? It's not about like, if you have a great startup idea and this helps one village in one country, that's still commendable, and I encourage everybody to do whatever you can do. However, like ultimately what we care about is like impact at scale. And we're doing all of this actually now for the World Food Program, but a number of external partners and clients, like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Humanitarian Grand Challenge, so which are programs on things like COVID-19 vaccine delivery in developing countries, maternal health, and so on. So just that I'll mention this as well. And now, what has been the results in the scaling programs? Last year, those scaling teams reached a total of 3.7 million people already globally, which is astonishing. So every single year since we operate for 6 years now, we double or triple the number of people reached every single year through those innovations that we're supporting. And which goes to show, like, it actually works. We can support innovators, we can support startups. We oftentimes, and Harald was joking about like, well, how many, I don't know, dating or food delivery apps do you need? It's like, there's always a market for that also, but like if you can use the exact same approach in developing countries for a primary purpose of doing good for the planet. And I think this is something that, if I can leave you with one thought, is like, if you are working on a startup, or you are working in a large corporate, and this is something you're interested in, There's so much we can do, so much that we can change the world for the better with seemingly small things, but they are growing. And then just to leave you with a glimpse of specific examples, because like I promised Harriet not to just talk high level, but like just to give you some exciting things that are happening. The first up is called building blocks, and where we're using blockchain technology, like it's a private Ethereum blockchain for cash-based transfers. So which is like, so it's a refugee, so it's Syrian refugees in Jordan or Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. They can go into stores and purchase food. In Jordan, it's with the iris scan. In Bangladesh, they have a near field communication smart card, like with a QR code also on it. They can go into a store. We save 98% of the banking fees, and it's almost 1 million people who can go to stores and purchase food like that. And we save money, it's a better service, and so on. Like, and this is just like one example where it's like, think beyond crypto. Blockchain can actually help you, and it's better because we can collaborate with more agencies. Second example, and this is what I'm excited about, is called Cloud to Street. And they are actually doing flood monitoring and like real-time and near real-time analysis of areas that will be flooded, so for early warning purposes. And we have been piloting this in developing countries already. So they're using satellites, pictures and artificial intelligence to do this automatically. So in developing countries, you can have early warning systems the same way you have in developed countries. And this is an example of showing you the power of what technology can do. Like, in the past, you maybe have had to build up a massive team of scientists and all of that. Now, essentially, artificial intelligence and satellite can do something that we couldn't do previously. Then third example is H2Grow, which is just something that it's in hydroponics growing. Now, some of you may know this. Hydroponics is growing plants without soil. You can actually grow a whole lot without soil. So you can grow plants in the desert. You can grow plants in your backyard where you have no earth or whatsoever, or in your home. And what's interesting is that it's an innovation that we've been using for 30,000 people who now actually earn money. They have an income. Sometimes those were people like that were in a refugee camp for over 40 years already, and they had no access to work or any other means of livelihood. And so giving people hope and also the basis of the future so they can provide for themselves is a great example. And it uses 90% less water. It's a perfect example for when you're thinking about climate change and we're running out of water, like 90% less water, and you also need less space. Why not think about more hydroponics plant growing? And the last thing, which actually I co-founded, just to show you like the power of crowdfunding also, is called Share the Meal. And like Harald, actually, he was, I think I would say, like, we first pitched this startup at one of his events. So like, I'm really grateful for him also. The Share the Meal, it's a crowdfunding app. So on the touch of a button, you can share a meal with a child in need. And like, this is really it's 70 euro cents, it's 80 US dollar cents. And 70 cents feeds a child for a day. And there's already 5.7 million people on the planet doing this, which is amazing because, like, my 70 cents or your 70 cents are seemingly small, but together we can actually do something that's really big. And, for instance, right now, the app also fundraises for, people in desperate need in Afghanistan. So like, this is something, it's just one touch on your phone and you can still do something that's very meaningful. So with this, that's just a quick snapshot for, priming the discussion of this morning. And I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thanks so much, Harald.
Thank you, Bernhard. We can learn so much always, and I like the concise address of the startups which have contributing to the innovation. Now, to remind you, Mila in our team here and the team Luciana, Salarashita, and Roman who help us, they will look at the chat. So if you have questions, please type them in the Vimeo or LinkedIn feeds, so that Mila can address them or point them out to us.
I
think now you're muted.
Harald, you're muted.
Yeah, I played with it a little bit. I wanted to see if Mila has questions, just pop in, basically. Is there a question already, Mila?
No, not yet.
Okay.
But if there's one, I'll jump in.
All right. And welcome and good morning, Mila. Okay, Bernhard, I have a question. So I think you demonstrated very well that you're not only working on food, you're basically tied into the whole SDGs, so that poverty and some of these are connected. How are you addressing, or how do you work with maybe either other agencies or governments across the board? Is there something that, let's say, your innovation and your pioneership in addressing questions, is that, let's say, shared with either other agencies or other SDGs?
So I think part of the beauty of being active in creating something that's good for the planet is also that we have an interest that other people are also very innovative and replicate what we do. So we're trying to share as much as we can actually. Now, the World Food Programme together with UNICEF and UNDP, we actually started something that's called the UN Innovation Network, which is like a network of innovators across the UN, which is with the specific purpose of sharing knowledge. There's also there's internal things that happen but there's also websites and the YouTube channel. Similarly for us, for the World Food Programme Innovation Accelerator, we are very active on LinkedIn, Twitter. We have our Medium blog, where we're trying to package up knowledge to open source this. So we realized it's not about just giving people the templates we're using for our programs, but it's about how can you actually package it up in a way so that people can really replicate it. So if somebody has, knows how to run a startup, how can you then really replicate what we're doing? So we are sharing knowledge on how do you do calls for applications, how do you run our innovation programs virtually, what are best practices in working with startups in developing countries when you're not there, and so on. So together, I think this is where, this year in total, we actually, in addition to that, we're running a total of 18 accelerator programs. 14 are for external partners. So that's all different verticals, different SDGs. Not because we have to, it's essentially people come to us and say hey, we'd like to run this. Can you help us build this up? And then we'll do it on our own. This is all where I think we are right now thinking about the future, where how can we increase the impact that we're having? And I think that's something that we all need to take ourselves seriously and think about it hard, where how could we increase the benefit to the people? How can we have the best startups increase the results? And look, some of the partners who we are running accelerators for, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, clearly they have impact on their own, and that's where working together, I think we can actually have more impact.
Maybe I have a critical question that is for a venture case. Some people might say, yeah, well, if you do something for Frankfurt, New York, and London, and you have, faster food delivery, to stay with this example, we can exactly calculate how much, return on the venture investment we can do. How could they also, let's say, see that it's interesting to actually do, well, food investment or any kind of innovation and startups for the global south, let's call it this way, where probably there's a huge number game, but is there a venture case, or have you seen a case? Share, I think, is a great example, but is there another case where you say, no, venture people, there's also money in here?
So there's definitely money that you can have either just from if you say venture debt, so essentially you are making the upfront investment, and then for example, a typical donor would come in and actually fund it. So that's kind of a de-risking case. But there's also startups that are working perfectly well, and this is where where there is problems, there's massive opportunities. And if you're thinking about this, where for instance, one of the problems that's prevalent in lots of developing countries is post-harvest losses. It's food waste, and between 40 to 50% of food is lost. So it actually never enters the food value chain. It's lost before it's ever actually gone from the field into the food value chain. And we've supported multiple startups that do support combating post-harvest losses, airtight storage, super simple solution. And we have proof, and we've done studies with MIT, that the smallholder farmers double or triple their household income. Wow. So, and that's just one specific thing. And if I'm telling you, your client now doubles or triples their income sustainably, It's like, you know, these are the type of things where all of a sudden you say like, oh, wow, well, this is a business case that could be quite interesting. Similarly, when you go into like technology use cases, like the one that I was talking about, cloud to street, where it's like, essentially you are a software company that you are offering it very little. I mean, the incremental cost of offering, like actually providing this, is like actually quite low. But essentially, like, you have a software business that has the license to print money. I think that's it's like one of those use cases where, like, you know, all the futuristic technologies come together, and then, you know, getting to shared economy solutions, where I think one of the smartest things that I've seen actually, like, so we've supported something like an Uber Eats in Somalia, for instance, like, which is and this is cheaper, like, we're saving money doing this, and it's a better service for people actually having this type of service. But another example is called Hello Tractor. It's Uber for tractors.
Cool.
And this is like, if you're thinking about this, it's a no-brainer. Where it's like, how long do you need a tractor? Like, you only need it, like, I don't know, once every year, or maybe twice every year. And then the fun part is, like, so they first started in Nigeria, and the harvest period is different in the south, in the middle, and in the north of the country, which means you can literally use the same tractor without any sort of, like, you know, compromise in the south, in the north, in the middle, and in the north. And you increase the utilization of the expensive tractor, and everybody's better off, right? And like, these are the type of, like, smarter business models that, you know, is maybe not as obvious, but there's lots of these type of things that you can actually think about.
A German farmer might say, yeah, we have this called Maschinenring or something, and we have cooperative models like this, where somebody has maybe the, I don't know, Mähdrescher, what's it called, the milling thing for corn or something, these giant machines which are expensive, and they just share it in their villages or in their regions.
Yeah, and but it's also like, where, you know, sometimes, you know, it might be that this just doesn't exist, or there's mistrust of these types of systems. And I think this is where, again, like, technology comes together with things that are you know, new solutions that people can trust, right? Where it's it's like, for all of a sudden, like, you might be able to say, like, okay, I can trust the app because I'm trusting the app more than a collective. And sometimes it's counterintuitive, but this is how the reality then happens. If you know, and if you see that it works, it's one of those aspects where there's definitely lots of opportunities, also in terms of classic things that are, you know, marketplaces, where it's more about, like, how do you share the profit with, like, let's say, the buyers, with the farmers. There's lots of opportunities in developing countries that you can think of.
There's a question regarding the app from someone from LinkedIn who's asking, where do the shared meals come from? So is it local farmers, or how are they brought to the users?
You mean for Share the Meal? Like, if you're donating through Share the Meal, so it's essentially like, it depends on which operation it is. So, like, typically, as the World Food Program, if there's food available in local markets, you know, 35% of the support is already even cash or vouchers. So, like, then the example that I was giving, so people can go into stores and purchase food, and that supports the local economy. If there isn't enough food in countries, and because of droughts, because of war, that's unfortunately oftentimes the case, then we would buy food. I mean, could be, you know, regionally, could be locally, and or it could be internationally. But just that, you know, so about 70% of the food that the World Food Program purchases and then transports to other countries is coming from developing countries. So it could be food from Pakistan going into Afghanistan, for instance, right? Or food from India going into Afghanistan, things like that.
I have a last question from my side, and this is, we use the program also as an invitation for people and users of a corporate lens, let's say. You know, I think there's a lot of people in the mid or inside corporations which say, yeah, my corporate has this and this thing to do, but we like everybody to think more about along the SDGs, what small changes might be more and better for the planet, so to say. Is there examples maybe as sort of where you collaborate with big multinationals or corporates to also help them understand new ways, new innovation, and you know, even the The example you gave with, let's say, better farming results and a lot of waste is something which, could be very interesting for stock prices of multinationals. But is there collaboration ideas or examples that you can maybe touch upon where you already start to work with some of these bigger companies?
Yeah, maybe just to say, like, so typically, like, you start with small steps, and then I guess you expand, like, as you're maturing in these types of like thought process, also like internally. Like a lot of times it maybe just starts with like individual motivation, where there's somebody who says like, I'm passionate about, climate, animal rights, hunger, like, I don't know, girls' education, whatever it is that you're passionate about, right? And then, you could actually start by, maybe there is a group of people who are interested in that. Maybe you want to do a donation drive or something like that, or like there's a year-end celebration where then, maybe the company doubles donations and like something like that. So that's kind of like the money element of it.
Mm-hmm.
Second element is about like what's the product, or like what are you actually making, right? Like there's a lot of tech companies who say, well, we have artificial intelligence engineers, we have project managers, we have marketing managers. Like what if, like, we could use that for a greater good, like help startups, help some of these causes a bit more. And like I would only encourage you, like this kind of I know this sometimes feels a little more not as tangible, like if you want to go paint a school or something, if that's your thing, please do that. A lot of times, if you, let's say, a marketing executive, you might be having a lot more impact by helping an organization, revamp their marketing, or by try as an artificial intelligence engineer, like donate some of your time to help a project actually develop something. And then the last thing, and this is where we come into like, what's your core business or about investing? And we've seen this a lot with like companies, even like we've had collaborations also with BASF, for instance, like a German company, about like, where they started to say like, okay, what can we do in order, we are selling products in developing countries, but so that it helps people. And even if it means that they have lower profitability, but those could be your future clients. And similarly, if you're purchasing products, it's like, what are the standards from which you're buying them? And I think this is where oftentimes people are underestimating the leverage or power that they have. If you change the standards that you are purchasing things locally, or like with what quality level, or like workers' rights level, these are huge things you can do, including like investment money. Like if you can make decisions on this can have a huge impact.
Great, thank you so much. I know we can talk for another half an hour.
There's so many questions that just came into the chat, but maybe Bernhard, you can have a look afterwards and just answer people. Maybe we can take one more that's interesting. Someone says, you're preaching these messages to the converted. How can these innovations be used to tell the rest of the world that it is possible, and why these changes are so vital?
It's a good question. Like I think part of what I'm trying to do, and like why I'm typically talking about different layers of innovations, is like, always think about like things that you can do immediately. What is it that you can do today, right? And I've been in that same situation, because like in Afghanistan, the World Food Program still has colleagues. We're still delivering food to people in desperate need right now. But I'm sitting in Munich. Like, what can I do right now, sitting in Munich, to help people in Afghanistan? The one thing I can do is like I go on social media and I promote Share the Meal, because like you can actually donate, and that food is actually ending up in people's hands who are desperate for food right now. So this is something that I'm thinking now. Part of these stories is also like, and I think this is where the work that Harald and Futur and like others are doing is vital. It's like invite more people to actually tell their story, invite more like. And I think we need the combination of both, talking about like what's the problem, so that the problem is taken seriously, and at the same time talking about like it's already happening and there are solutions that are already happening. Because I will oftentimes meet people who are saying, well, your innovations and startups, this is just these small little toys that you're playing with. And I'm telling them, look, it's 3.7 million people who are having a better life because we actually support those little toys. And this is something that I think we need to get the message across to more people, that you can actually make a difference. And not just because you want to feel good, but it's because it's actually really helping people, right? And I think this is we probably need more visibility, and like I'm as open for ideas as everybody else, I guess.
Thank you so much, Bernhard, and we will find a way to send you the questions, and maybe there's one or two others you can address. Okay, we have to introduce the panel. Thank you so much, Bernhard. Stick around, so maybe there's a closing question or some reaction after the panel we want to share. So I like to introduce first Abir, and then I talk to Christoph and Tobias, and like to open up a let's say a conversation with people who are also doing their part in helping with innovation and new ideas. So Abir Haddad has recently made her doctor, congratulations again, and is a legal futurist. She's working with the UN Climate Change Secretariat and UN FCCC program, especially with Resilient Frontiers, and our friend Youssef Nassef, the director of adaptation there, and others. She has also been active in different courts, and she is passionate about new laws and ways. Now I have to go to my screen where I see everybody, but I don't see Abir. Here she is. Okay, so she has a very, let's say, a remarkable career, but also a much more remarkable story and beginning of her journey. I would describe it to where she is now. Let's see if we have some time to talk deep dive into this as well, because there's a remarkable story hidden there. Abir, I will ask you maybe just a personal question, and I know all of you or most of you are speaking from your personal point of view and not necessarily representing their companies, just as a disclaimer in front. The IPCC report, when it came out a couple of weeks ago, what does this, let's say, maybe reminded you of, or is there a personal experience, or how was your reaction to this big book of knowledge? Welcome. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here. Really, I'm really happy to be part of this panel. Thank you so much, Bernhard. Like, I'm just like very excited about your speech and your preach. And I thought I'm a preacher, but like you did it so well, so that inspired me. I could relate to so much you were saying. So from the part of like, how can I help? But from the other side, like being on the other side, who is helped. So thank you very much for your work. Okay, sorry, going back, Harald, to the report. Yeah, like it. First of all, it remembered me a little bit of this term, the scorched earth. You know that when during the war, people just destroy everything, so the invaders can't find anything to feed themselves or to survive. This is how I felt what we are doing with our earth for the future generation. Like, this was the first thought, but then it reminded me definitely of something I experienced in Jordan at the Dead Sea. So this report is not only, oh my God, we're gonna hit the 1.5 degree and this gonna have this and this consequences, but it's not really measurable for us. For me, it's quite measurable. If you go to the Dead Sea, you can see huge holes, because the Dead Sea is trocknet. Sorry, drying. Yeah, it dries up. So, and not only dries up, but also is used up by industrial companies there. So there's huge holes, and it's getting more and more every year I go there. And there's an amazing NGO named Numeira directly at the Dead Sea. They give you like they educate people around there about this topic. The problem is when these holes get bigger, Bhutan, which is extracted already from the Dead Sea, will exit to the surface, and this is what happens many thousand years ago. So a huge earth fire was there. So So this is like real. This is real for the people there. If you go there, you can feel it. People are afraid of the big fire coming because in their history, they know there was a big fire at some time. So to be there and okay, if in 10 years, like in 2030, it actually can happen. This is what the report is saying. It's not just stories of afraid people living there. So it's quite scary. So the report is not just a report for me. It's really something I can feel in my body. So I give like my advice for everyone: go to places where you can see and feel what is really happening to the earth. Yeah.
Now, you call yourself a legal futurist. I like this term because it's close to my heart. But we know also that there's ways that law is moving slowly. Do you have some spots of hope where you saw that maybe legal aspects or the law or can be even a force for good or of change, so to say? Because we see, there's activists on the streets. This year we have an election, so obviously that's part of our law in Germany, for example. Now, where do you see spots of hope where we see good things happening in a way which might be surprising?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, my job is also to look around the world where like innovative legal frameworks or innovative instruments all around the world, because I'm coming from a comparative law background. So, and then I try to compare how can we take from this legal system and put into other legal system to achieve what the desired futures, as you call it, we want to achieve. And this is why is that important? Because research showed that if you like climate goals or any goals put into law has a huge impact on the society, because this shows the importance of this topic. So that's why we need some kind to express things in law, so it makes it visible for everyone. And Spot of Hopes is just recently happened in Germany as the higher constitutional court in Germany ruled that the laws in like that the government is not doing enough to achieve the to stay below the 1.5 degree, and this violates the rights of the future generation. So this is something really, really new. We didn't know, didn't exist before. So the court just came up with the idea, wow, we can just protect the future generations, which is, and now it sounds very innovative, like, oh my God, the court is amazing. I know it's amazing, but it's nothing new actually. It's a philosophy or a way of thinking other indigenous people have already and live towards it. Like, the project seven generations, it's like the 7th generation in Native American culture, for example. Everything you do, you need to think of the generations ahead. So you need to be sustainable in everything you act, how you deal with the world's resources and your resources. And so on the one hand, I think it's amazing. On the other hand, I think, okay, so why don't we go back to these indigenous values and try to learn from them and their morals? How can we improve our legal system? Like moving away from this Eurocentristic point of view to a more, holistic, and how can we learn from them? And this is actually what Resilience Frontiers is doing, and what my boss, Yusuf Nassif, is preaching all the time. He's saying like, those indigenous people are like protecting 80% of the biosphere, and why don't we learn from them? So this is what I do in legal system, and part of what I can call work, amazingly, is spending a lot of time with indigenous people all around the world, but especially with Bedouins, because I do speak their language. And there I can also learn how they deal with animals, what is the connection with the nature, and how even they deal with their food, and how much do they eat. And as soon as you start experiencing it, you develop like different approaches to norm and truth and what is right and what is wrong, and what are the values, and why do we have these values we have, which we express in our laws. So I think definitely we will need a radical change, and I hope these elections will. I'm not really optimistic.
Okay, I want to come to Christoph and ask you a final question, Abir, before I do this, because Christoph is also head of policy at Climeworks. Now, can you, Abir, from your legal background, explain to us a little bit what sort of the difference you see between policy making, legal law making, and why don't we take maybe COP26 as an example, because this is sort of the showcase of policy making for climate change. We have seen the Paris Agreement, which everybody talks to, and was finally a big success, and that's what we refer to now maybe as sort of the ground zero of change in climate change. Now there was Madrid in between, there was Glasgow was postponed, now we're going to Glasgow this year. Is there, how are these events, let's say, how are they showcasing policy making and the timing that it requires, and all these kind of different work streams coming to an end or coming to a kind of to a showcase, let's call it like this. What do you think about it? Will we see something more like Paris, more like Madrid, or something in between? What's your take personally, I would say, on this?
I can just say I want to believe that it will be another Paris. I just want to believe. I can't forecast, and I don't want. I saw a TED talk from Christiana Figueres, who actually achieved the Paris Agreement. And she was talking about the disaster after Copenhagen, or the disaster of Copenhagen, and how she made it to Paris Agreement. And she was asked by a reporter after Copenhagen, and she said, like, the only thing I could do at this moment is give hope and believe. I wanted to believe that it's still possible, because otherwise I would need to give up. And actually, this is what Bernhard just said, like, we shouldn't underestimate the power or what we can do. And I think the most important thing is we need to start believe that change is possible. And this is what happened, because she didn't give up on our climate, on our earth, and we shouldn't give up on ourselves, because as soon as we open up to the thought that it's even possible, then change will be possible, because we should always question the status quo, always questioning the status quo, and why would we just like the victims of our of others. We can create the future. This is what you're also preaching at the Futur.io. We can create the future. So I really just hope, I believe that after COVID and what happens, and like, I hope that there is a mindset shift took place, and that we will, that people will see a need towards change.
All right, we have to bring in the gentlemen, Christoph and Tobias. So thank you, Abir. Stick around also. I'm so curious, and I have to watch the time that I don't ask too many questions. Christoph, you are representing Climeworks, and I think you're doing amazing work in sucking CO2 out of the air and store it. Now, we want to hear a little bit more how this works, how it started, but maybe as a transition, can you describe your work as you are in charge of policy at Climeworks? And then I also want to bring in Tobias at the same time in a little minute, and see that we can kind of open up the conversation between you and you all, including Abir. Christoph, good morning, Zurich, I guess. Is this
Zurich? Yeah. Morning, Harald, and thanks for having me. So I'll actually start with how it works, because then it's easier to describe my work. So what we do is very simple. We filter CO2 out of the air, which is very hard, because we're chasing 410, 12, 15 parts per million at the moment. And the reason why we do this is there are two main reasons. So A, we will and have emitted too much CO2 already into the atmosphere. And there are just two ways to get CO2 back out of it. One is plants, and the other is things like we do, direct air capture and other technological approaches. And we don't have enough space to solve the problem with plants. We need 3 planets, so we need to make it smaller. And this is the stuff behind me. Chasing 415 parts per million is expensive, and it will always be. It's a technology, so the price will come down. So currently it is still high, but as we make it bigger, the price will come down. And that's my job. My job is to make it bigger. And how do we make this bigger? We need to raise the price. Now, currently, individuals are buying this. I'm buying the removals we offer. Big companies like Microsoft. We just signed a deal with Swiss Re over $10 million. They're buying this, but they're buying it strategically because they know we need this and they want to contribute to making it bigger again. But the other way to make it bigger is obviously is policy. So you can make emitting CO2 more expensive, or you can have other mechanisms to scale this up without making CO2 as expensive as it would need to be for this. So R&D investment, for example, government buy downs, things like that. And this is my job. So my job is convince policymakers to understand that this is needed. We're talking about the IPCC report. This is not new. This has been in the IPCC report going back to the AR4. So that's 15 years ago. But it was never so the first time it appeared in the political summary, which is the bit everybody reads, that was the SR15, so the special report on 1.5. And the upcoming AR6 is now the one where, again, will be more prominent. So we emitted too much, need to take it out. Technologically and technically, it's possible to do this, but it's not big enough. And then the problem is scale. So we need to scale this by 60% per year, every year until 2050 to solve the problem. And humankind hasn't done that too many times. Electric cars are currently scaling at 50% per year. It's doable, but it's a big daunting task. And maybe if I have another minute to come back to the recent developments. So, Abia mentioned the German court ruling. There have been other court rulings recently in Canada. So the Canadian government was ruled by court to raise the price of CO2. And most importantly, I find in the Netherlands, Shell was ruled to remove their emissions, basically, or first lower them. And that's incredible. And on top of that, we have seen in the last 3 years, we've seen so many countries having net zero goals and more countries having legally binding net zero goals. Now, why is that important? That's always my first step. I want to introduce a net zero goal because then you can calculate how to get to zero, and then you will understand, there are unavoidable emissions that you need to remove. And that's how it starts. And maybe last sentence, I think there was also, in Madrid, there was the disaster of Madrid where the kind of, Paris Agreement or the workbook, the Article 6 workbook, which is the important part, was almost falling to bits. And, Glasgow is, I think, the last chance. But I would say if this doesn't work in Glasgow, there's so many countries. I think 68% of the world economy now has net zero goals, and most of the countries do. So they're like several tracks, and the train is now moving. And there's a lot of hope, I would say, or reason for hope.
Okay, I have a practical question, but then I have to go to Tobias because I have to watch the clock. And I have 50 other questions, but this is, I think, hopefully interesting for other people. So now you put the huge machine. I don't know if it has a nickname. I want to know it because there's, I don't know, whatever this is. So your machine stands there in free air, and you have to do the undaunting task of being 0.00, a couple of zeros, 0.4% effective, because this is the little things in the haystack, you're finding the needle. Now, wouldn't it make more sense to put this right away on top of some emitters, like the Shell factory or something like that, because that's where some of that CO2 is more concentrated? Just
yeah, good question, and I'll be
question. Hopefully,
no, it's not. That is a very, very central question. So I'll be quick. So we need to switch off all the fossil point sources that we can switch off, or that are uneconomical under in a net zero environment. But obviously, the ones that remain, like cement and some others, you absolutely should take it from the flue stack. But what I'm talking about is taking CO2, reducing the content in the atmosphere, and then it has to come out of the air. There's no way around this. And there's a second big track to that, because we have to switch our products that contain fossil CO2. We have to switch them to atmospheric. So the other track is to replace things like aviation fuel. We can make from thin air. We can make it with renewable energy. We take hydrogen and CO2, and then we combine it to methane, and then we can fish a top shit, and you can just you have kerosene. So we have to switch our economy from digging it up from the ground to taking it out of the sky, and that's why we do what we do.
Okay, thank you so much, Christoph. Switching to Tobias, and then I will take a question, one or two in the end when we bring everybody back in. Tobias, you have a fascinating software. I would say it's the Asana to-do list of climate change. This might become the, workhorse, the operating system of people who want to do change and be, very planful about it, however you call it, project management system. Tell us a little bit about your company, Global Changers, and what you do. How did you come up with the idea? Where do you see the first traction? Welcome and good morning, Tobias in Berlin.
Thanks a lot, Harald. Yeah, it's an amazing discussion so far, and maybe touching upon what Christoph said and what they are doing, we see two things that you can do to solve the climate crisis. And the one part is removing CO2, and the other part is really hardcore reducing it. And that's where we're kind of focusing on, helping companies empower them reach zero emissions. And that's why we built a platform for helping them to decarbonize and also going deeply into their supply chain, because that's where kind of the core of the emissions are also lying. And yeah, we're working with a lot of change makers from the SME space up to larger corporations that are basically bring the commitments to net zero into actions, because this is kind of the missing step right now. We don't need, yes, it's nice to have the commitments, but we're helping them with our software solutions to really act on it and automate the whole process, making it easier for them. And there are a lot of things happening right now. There's pressure from society, there's regulatory changes that we haven't really touched upon yet, like the EU taxonomy and also the corporate sustainable reporting directive, like tightening it up basically for a lot of companies. And also realizing that sustainability becomes really a management discipline, and sustainability means also profitability. And that's what we're trying to show the board, basically. That's not something nice that you can do in the CSR department, but it really is also something that they should look at and take care of, because at the end of the day, it's also good for their business.
Very good. I saw the let's say, the beta version, I think, of the software and your program. When are you releasing it? And can you describe a little bit the function, what you are supporting with the application or with the system?
Sure, yeah. We're rolling it out in October, basically, to a lot of companies, testing it right now, also with banks and insurance companies and all the things going around it. And yeah, it really takes in basically the strategy and all the data from the carbon accounting, but then making it tangible into management, basically task, right? We have a huge database of reduction measurements, and basically building out the roadmap year by year by the reduction measurements that a company has to take. Also what it means budget-wise, what it means impact-wise, and also what it means time-wise, right? And then going, as you said, into this Asana board and really making a project management to, bringing also the change into the companies and making it actionable.
Yeah, I would subscribe it maybe that you you have a corporate company and you basically want to reach your goals, whether you want to be climate neutral at 2030 or 2035, and then you can actually put in there that the lease of 10 of your cars are up in a year from now, and then you want to replace it with electric cars because there was maybe another buying decision 2.5 years ago. So you can put this on a timeline, and then you can see the effect really kind of build up in front of you. is that kind of a good assumption?
Definitely, it's a part of that. And I mean, I'm definitely urging, and all the companies we're working with, we're pushing at least to reach net zero by 2030 and heavily reducing the emissions. And yeah, everything else I think is a bit not caring about the planet at the end.
Yeah. I think this is because in the end, after all, let's say, knowledge and information and even measuring, you have to come into the action mode. And I think that's where your software comes in. And yeah, thank you so much for being also part of the program. Basically, all of your speakers are part of the Leader in Sustainability Innovation and Execution program. So thank you for sharing your knowledge with the class. Also, thank you, Bernhard, for pointing out Beyond the Street, no, Cloud to the Street, which is also, we invited them to be part of it. Now, I think we have maybe time for one last question before we go to the raffle. I want to stick to the timing. Is there maybe an interesting last question from the audience, Mila? Is there maybe a question that all three could answer? Or all four?
But all three, no. There's very...
Okay.
I mean, maybe we can have everyone's opinion on this. What is being done or what can be done to address the problems caused by animal agriculture?
So agriculture technologies or anything with food production. Anybody has a answer to that? Might be a little bit off.
I mean, it's like, I'll give a short answer, which I think we always have to be just mindful of people's livelihoods and also development stage. And this is where I think from where a lot of where we come from, if you're living in Western Europe or in the US, you may think about wow, you can just get rid of this. Now, unfortunately, in a lot of developing countries, this might be people's livelihoods or how they are also historically for decades and generations have lived, and what they what you would invest your money into if you have any money and things like that. So it's not I think we need to be a little conscious of history and also a little humility towards people's livelihoods and history and so on. Now, I think there is a big aspect when you think about cellular agriculture, or also meat alternatives. I'm also working on I'm on an advisory board for an X Prize for Feeding the Next Billion, which is obviously, if you think about that, non-animal protein sources are probably one of the best things you can put smart energy into, and look at hydroponics and other things. There's lots of things that plant-based diets can actually do, that but it's not as easy. I'll just end it here, whereas even for us, if I don't know, maybe you want to do more sports, everybody knows you probably should do more sports and you should eat more broccoli. Why are we not doing it? Just because. And I think that's part of the problem here, right? It's
the problem 99 in front of the keyboard, so to say. Okay, sum it up. Thank you so much for all your contributions and for your insights. I think again, it shows that there's so much diversity in innovation that we're already starting in so many different ends, and we never have enough time, which is the big question, right? How much time do we have before this decade is out, before 2030? We want to solve the SDGs, and we need a lot more of innovation and a lot more of ideas and people like you. So thank you, Abir, thank you, Bernhard, thank you, Christoph, and thank you, Tobias, for all the things you do and contribute with your organizations to help to make the world a better place. I really think we should do this more often and have more exchange. I hope we get good feedback. Give us any ideas we can do better. And if you want to do this again soon. I know I am, because I've already over time, as it's a little bit usual, but I try to wrap up so that people can go to their second coffee and do what the day is, starting out for them. Now, I will go to Mila and say, how can we, do we have a list of the people who maybe want to participate in the raffle so that they hopefully are still on, so that we can, award two people with the grand prize?
We do. We have a list of 51 people.
Okay.
So we have to pick two numbers between 1 and 51.
I like, you can pick one number. I like a number which is 17, SCG 17, and my birthday. So I think 17 is a good number.
Oh.
Do you have a, can I see a screen or something where you can?
Well, you can't see it as yet because then it would be cheated. So we have 17.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
And maybe one of the speakers can pick a second number because
okay.
I've seen the list.
Okay, let's make it Abir.
Mm-hmm.
Abir, we need a magic number.
A magic number between 1 and 25, 1 and 51. You're on mute.
15.
15.
Wow, really close.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay, good.
Okay.
It's like somehow in the middle.
So the randomizer machine goes on.
Do we see it?
No, I see the wheel, the flywheel thingy.
One sec.
Started the screen sharing. Well, sometimes the nifty technology. We have this randomized website which Roman found. Here it is. Okay, look.
Okay, so 15 is Nuranessa Japi.
Yeah.
And 17, Vinicius Cardieri Lopez.
Okay.
Are they still on the live stream?
Well, let's say if they should send us an email or well, reach out. And since they participated, we will we will give them the chance to well, have participate for free in the in our new program. I just got a message and a reminder that we also want to remind everybody that with all your registration. So hopefully, if you're in Stillness Scream, you see this. Please register on the website, as I mentioned in the beginning, future.io/sustainability. And if you register there, you will get a code for the people who participated in this call for saving 50% because the course starts tomorrow. And from tomorrow on, it's not only starting tomorrow, but every day. So, if you decide to make your entry in a week from now or 2 weeks from now, that's all fine. You will start and then we will invite you for new learning sessions here and there for Ask Me Anything sessions or work sessions. But your chance today to enter your email and then you get the code to save 50% before we go to the normal price tomorrow. So thank you all very much. I hope you had a good start. I hope that the extra espresso 7 minutes are still okay for you. And that if you see this in the recording, I hope that this is also encouraging you to do your part, to follow our speakers, as well as hopefully engage with Future.io and our programs. And see you on one of the next episodes and Ask Me Anything sessions with our speakers or other webinars we will do in the future. Thanks, team. Thanks, all of the speakers. Again, Abir, Bernhard, Christoph, and Tobias. Thank you so much for this short espresso shots and insights into what you're doing. We will see you again. And thanks all everybody for watching. Have a fantastic day wherever you are. And be good, be better to the planet, and be safe.